Oh, yeah.
Although
This
this
will
morning,
be the test.
Today is
morning,
a trigger day. isn't
today
it?
is all the red.
Yeah.
Today's the day it might fall.
That's funny. Colin, so good thing you're with us.
Well, happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Thank you.
It is February 14th.
Woohoo!
And we are live in Senate Economic Development with Judge Sone, the Environmental Court. Did we give I don't have the agenda. Did we give this an hour? An hour. Oh, great. Okay. So kind of hopefully an extended conversation about timeliness and court process and procedure, where things might be getting stuck and bottlenecked. And you gave us some information. That's exactly what it's right. Okay,
Perfect.
and so, yeah, please just identify yourself.
So, good morning. My name is Tom Zone, and I am the Chief Superior Judge. And that includes all divisions of the state, which the Environmental Division is one of our divisions. So I understand that the committee had some questions about the E-Court Environmental Division. And I didn't know if you wanted me just to give a little bit of background first, or you had questions. What would work best for you?
I think a little background would be helpful. It's dangerous to tell the committee we have an hour because we did book a half hour for this, and then we have Ellen coming in. So, and Ellen's time is still precious. So if we spill over a little bit, that's okay. But if you could give a brief background.
So my understanding is that there's a concern in this committee about, we'll say, delay. And that's actually a concern in many committees right now when we look at the judiciary and we look at many aspects of our society after the pandemic. When we look at the Environmental Division, a little bit of history is helpful to understand. Back in the early 2000s, before 2004 and 2005, we had Act 250 decisions that were appealed to what was the former Environmental Board. At that time, it was de novo appeal before a quasi-judicial board. A de novo appeal means it's a new appeal. You start all over again and present your evidence fresh. That process was something that was often completed in 6 months or less. However, there were complaints about that process. The complaints talked about the fact that the quasi-judicial board was perceived at times to pay more attention to policy rather than the consistent and due administration of the law. There was also a problem that there were really two inconsistent appeal paths. Because municipal review of a given project, for instance, a housing development, that would go to the Environmental Division. And then what would happen is you'd also have appeals to the Environmental Division coming up from another area. And so you'd have the Environmental Board and the municipal area, different appeal structures, and you would have inconsistent terms and conditions essentially. And that would sometimes lead developers to have to go back and restart the process. And so what happened was in 2005, there was what's called permit reform. And the idea was that Act 250 permit reform was going to result in one-stop shopping. Yeah, the concept and the belief was that it would result in legally consistent decisions that were consistent with municipal Act 250 and A&R decisions. And that's what we in the Environmental Division in the courts have attempted and strive to deliver. That is, you follow the law and you have consistent decisions. One of the things that also comes with that is additional delays, though, because due process requires reasonable discovery. It requires finding out what the other side, if you will, has for evidence and what the issues are. Judges can sometimes push cases and say, we got to move this case along. But the reality is, oftentimes, the attorneys recognize it's an important matter. And we want to get the old expression, we want to get it right. We just don't want to get it done. And so discovery is a process.
I have not heard that expression.
We can sometimes get something, again, in the judiciary done very quickly, but it's not going to be the due process that the parties deserve. The developers deserve the ability to find out everything they need to find out to be able to present their plans appropriately and address any concerns. Opponents have to have the right to find out what the developers are doing and to assess that. And so this can lead to delays. Oftentimes, those delays are really, if you will, agreed to. The parties can both say the developer might really want to get things moving, but in my experience, the attorneys recognize, well, yeah, my client might want to get this done in 30 days, but that's not going to happen. it's going to take additional time. And so the courts will work with the attorneys to structure discovery schedules and trial schedules. And what I have provided to you are the environmental court dispositional guidelines, which are a rather comprehensive set of the timelines that the court aspires to, if you will, and tries to work with. And so as the case is going through, there can be delays at different times within the process, and that can push everything back. Then you have issues where there might be availability of the attorneys for trial, or whether the judges have other trials. Currently, there are 125 cases pending in the environmental division, all at different timeframes. And those cases are each unique. They each have different issues. And so even though we have guidelines for each category, there's no one size fits all that, oh, absolutely, every case is going to be done in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months.
And can you speak to a capacity issue?
Well, we have 2 judges, we have 2 law clerks, and that has historically been able to address the cases that come in. We've had some delays due to some judicial absence, if you will. We had one of the judges had to spend some time off the bench due to some issues of the personal side.
One of the 2 judges.
One of the 2 judges, right. There was a medical issue that was addressed, but beyond that, we also have the ability to assign. The legislature has provided that we have 2 judges specially assigned there in that division full time. However, I also have the ability as the chief superior judge to specially assign other superior judges and retired judges to assist and address case flow matters. In the past several months, we've assigned Judge Mary Teachout, for instance, to take over a significant environmental case. Also, one of our newer superior judges, Dan Richardson, has experience in connection with environmental matters. And so I assigned him with our most recent rotation and assignment schedule to have the environmental division as his backup. And so we are able to put more resources into the environmental division to address case flow issues. And it's our hope that we keep, right now, like many of the divisions, we're not meeting the dispositional guidelines in all of our cases, but we're still going to try, and we're still going to address them. And so
Can you say that in layperson's terms? You're not meeting the dispositional guidelines?
So if you look at, for instance, the first page,
Mhm.
I think it's E-Court case type, Act 250 and ANR de novo appeal. It says that 11 months decision issued. We might have cases where 12 months decision issued. So we want that.
You might, or you do? Are you?
Oh, we do.
thinking
We have
that? Okay.
cases that we are not meeting that 11 months.
Okay.
In the categories, we have cases that do not meet the aspirations that we set
Okay.
for getting them done in a certain time frame. And our goal is to determine, is there something we can do better? Does that include adding more judge time? And if it does, we're doing it.
And I mean, if we added yet more housing projects to the pipeline, would you be pulling more judges in? Do you feel like the 11 months would turn into 12 or more months more often?
When we were recently, we looked at the guidelines and
Yeah.
recognized that some of the guidelines were unrealistic. The environmental, as far as being too short based upon experience.
Okay.
A number of the guidelines for the environmental division were actually ones that, for our recommendations, were going to remain the same because they were somewhat, we felt that they were within a range that we should be able to meet. When you look at guidelines, we can sometimes get wedded to the idea that, well, this guideline says this amount. Well, the National Center for State Courts talks about dispositional guidelines. And when you look at that, there's not an expectation, if you will, that every case is going to be decided in, but you want a good number of them. And oftentimes 80% could be used. You want 80% of the cases to try to get resolved within a given time frame. And so if you added, if there were more housing matters coming through, we are able to have the judges who are there take care of the matters. Tom Walsh, Judge Walsh is the presiding judge. And if I say to Judge Walsh, do you need extra help? What's the capacity like right now? If he says, well, I could use some extra judge time, then what I would do is look for available resources to assist, whether it's a retired judge such as Judge Teachout, who is hearing one case, or shifting over other Superior Court resources such as Judge Richardson or another judge. We have the ability to do that. One of the issues that comes up is, well, we're down judges right now. We have 3 openings with another one starting on April 1st. So right now we are struggling to have adequate judicial resources to deal with the family court cases, the criminal cases, and the civil matters. The environmental division is probably one of the strongest staffed and with as far as judges and clerks right now. That's one of the strongest divisions we have for the ability to address the capacity. We are at much less capacity to address cases in some of our other divisions because, again, we have judges who are not assigned yet or appointed by the governor. When we have those judges, one of the things that I've also asked for, and we're talking on Thursday, I believe, to the House Appropriations, and we met with Senate Appropriations, is we've requested another judge in our budget.
Okay.
And that judge and a law clerk. And the hope would be that that judge, I said, would be specially assigned down in, would have the position as a vacancy noted for the Bennington, Rutland, in that corner of the state. And that would also include going over to Wyndham County in that area. But what that does is it frees up another judge who is currently going there, for instance, from up north. And so that would give us additional judge capacity to be able to shift someone over to assist as the time may be necessary in the environmental court.
Right. I mean, if they're backed up in other form, in family, superior, et cetera, and you're taking them for environmental matters, that doesn't seem like a good plan. So I'm glad you have a request in.
But one of the things that happens too is we recognize this is a balance. Remind like the plates or the juggling, because if someone's in the juvenile division and they are trying to get their children back, what's one of the largest issues they have? Housing. If someone's in the criminal court and they have issues in connection with whether it's probation or incarceration, what's one of the issues? Housing. Civil court, what are we seeing? Evictions, housing. And so that balance is, we recognize that what is happening in the environmental court, some people might think, well, that's just, it's permits, it's building. No, it's really creating a foundation for some of what we're doing in the other courts. And so it is a
They're all
balance.
important.
Every court has a significant importance in our state, especially to the people who are involved in those cases.
Right.
And so we need to try to strike that balance in a way that's fair to everyone. And I think we have so far been able to, again, put, when I say about additional resources, it's doing it in a way that's not taking away from some of the critical matters we're dealing with in the other courts, but it is doing it in a way that allows us to add to the environmental division judicial resources that will hopefully get the cases moving a little faster.
I think that everyone has questions.
Right. I don't know. Are you ready? for
Yeah,
questions? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
So when a case comes through, can I just lump the 2 types of cases in one, the municipal and the Exit 15 A&R? Do you, if it's denied, if the permit is denied, do you deny all of it or part of it, or can you choose?
The hearing is de novo, so the court has the opportunity to put, remember I said earlier that we had sometimes inconsistent permits come up. The court has the ability to put everything in a comprehensive format in its appeal.
So redo the whole permit, maybe, or have a completely different outcome in theory.
Theoretically, yes.
Interesting.
And that's something the legislature has taken out before, is the ability to have the de novo appeal versus the, can you tell me what the
other one, that was
On the
one of my
record.
questions.
on the record? Oh, that's what it was.
So are we happy with de novo, and is that not up for discussion now? Because I did have a question about that, but I can skip that.
here.
Okay, I'll
I
skip
don't-
that.
I mean,
It'll
we could
remain
put
rolling
it up
around in
for,
my head.
yeah. It
So,
would have to go to another committee.
Yeah, it's not our jurisdiction.
okay,
And it's not natural resources either.
okay. So what proportion of appeals are successful and cause the developer to go back square one, or
I don't have that specific information at this time. I can get that for you.
is it more than half or less than half?
I don't know that answer. I apologize. I can't tell you, when we say successful, I guess it really depends on what's the definition of success in that case. A developer may go into a case with a permit that's being appealed and may lose a number of the conditions that they don't want. And they may gain conditions that they do want. And so how they view it, I don't know. I can't give you an answer as to how many permits are just say, okay, you have to go all the way back down and start again. I don't know. the
Right.
answer.
Yeah, and really what I'm getting at is there some type of appeal that ultimately typically is a waste of time? I don't want to say a waste of time, but I can't think of another word, but is not helpful.
Meant to run the clock kind of thing, like
Right.
the delay tactic.
Yes, or is obstructionist, but it doesn't result in something beneficial to the community.
There are many who believe that some actions taken in connection with these appeals would meet that criteria.
So,
And that's a concern that people have expressed.
right,
I don't think it's appropriate for me to say
No.
that someone exercising their rights in the court is a waste of time.
no,
There are those, if you had attorneys from either both sides,
Yes.
you would probably have attorneys having views that, yes, they think that appeal was a waste or that one not, but it's not our place to weigh in on that.
I completely understand. I appreciate you being forthright. Is there a mechanism to discourage that, or have the folks have more skin in the game?
Well, there's something called, if you look, for instance, on the first chart, right in the middle, under E Court Case Act 215 ANR, it says right in the middle, 120 to 150 days, 5 months. Down B, motion for summary judgment filed. So motion for summary judgment is a legal filing made in accordance with the rules of civil procedure that says there is no genuine issue of material fact in connection with this dispute, and that the party believes that they are entitled to judgment as a matter of law. So that's a mechanism, if you will, that can sometimes shortcut it because you don't have a trial to develop facts because the standard itself says there's no genuine issue of material facts. And so it's basically, look, we all agree what the facts are. We just disagree on the law, and the court can assess it and determine it there. And that will, as you know, instead of at 5 months, if that were filed, there's times to respond. A decision could be issued in 7 months, as opposed to, if there's no summary judgment grant, 11 months. So that can speed the process up. If there's tactics that are violative of the rules of civil procedure in terms of inappropriate discovery tactics or filings that do not meet what's called Rule 11, which is a good faith basis to advance arguments or pursue claims, the court does have the ability under the rules to issue sanctions, but sanctions are not something that are generally issued just because the court disagrees with your position. You have to engage in some behavior that really transgresses what the rules are designed to provide.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Brock, did you?
Well, yeah, we obviously talked about this last year. And, overall, I think what our goal is in the discussion is to say, how can we get this done faster? Some of that is policy issue that the legislature controls. Obviously, much of this is a legal issue that you control about how to get to an end result that's fair and that meets the conditions of the law. I know a number of other states, and I know I've got some research being done right now, I haven't gotten it back yet. Do we have other states that have similar kinds of laws that get things done a lot faster? And what do they do differently than what we do? And that we'll see what that, if anything, that comes back with. But if our goal is, and part of it also is, again, the de novo issue, which I hear quite frequently from people involved in the process, is that we spend a lot of time going through a municipal planning process. We spend a lot of time going through through Act 250. And each time it seems we start from scratch in doing it. And so we're doing things over and over again. And that costs a lot of money in terms of, it's a full employment act for lawyers and engineers by the time it gets done. What can we do from a policy standpoint to streamline this and also to get things done, because we're in a critical situation. The criticality is we can't get housing done. We had a developer in here within the past week who has been spending, I don't know how many months going through a municipal planning process to get the development approved. And now after, how many months was it? You remember?
It was some years.
Yeah, I think it's 2 years.
And now he's at Act 250 and starting there to begin with. And it had been 2 to 3 years. And we kind of stand back as policymakers, recognizing we have a critical situation in which we have this horrible shortage of housing. We're losing employees. We're losing the ability of employers to continue to provide jobs in Vermont because we can't get housing built. And our goal is to, how can we blast through this? What have others done? And to the extent the judiciary could give us some ideas as to what would be acceptable to you, what would work, what would in effect meet the needs of being fair and adhering to law. Are there laws that we could change or processes that we could change that would get the end result of fairness, but a lot faster than what we're doing now?
So I will tell you what a number of others have said could be some changes. I am not saying that this is something that I am advocating or saying, oh, you need to do this. Because if we look back at the permit reform, there were reasons that was done. When people say, well, why can't we just do something on the record for the appeal, as opposed to having this de novo appeal from the municipal or the Act 250 board? Well, they're not on the record proceedings. You have to go back. You'd have to, and what that means is they don't have the record. They're not developing the record for someone to review in a meaningful way. And so you have to have a meaningful development of a record to have on the record review, which might speed things up. And so, unless that were going to happen, unless you went back to the municipalities and the Act 250 board and revamped that and then did something different. And even if you did that, it used to be you'd basically be cutting out the environmental division, because then you might have a direct appeal, but you've developed the factual record before the municipal authorities. And there are those who believe that's not appropriate. There are those who believe that the factual development and the matters that take place before the environmental division are critical to the best development of the information that benefits us as a state. But again, there may be others who believe, well, let's try something different and do it down lower. But if you wanted to do that, you'd have to restructure that.
Yep.
Have we tried to say you are exempt from de novo appeal if you have this process in place?
I'm unaware of any statutes or laws that have come out that have suggested that.
Okay, Senator Berkman?
Yeah, I think one of the things we're looking at is trying to reduce the number of appeals, which we have in a section of this bill. And I'm just curious how you could characterize some of the appeals which do delay some of these projects. Are they, you and I have experienced the Safford Common delays that were just endless appeals by abutters with a lawyer who was practicing in a pro bono capacity, and so there was no cost element for the neighbors, and they just kept appealing. Can you characterize the appeals that you experience in eCourt and sort of give us a sense of their character? I mean, do we see that kind of appeal continue, or can you give us sort of some sense of those appeals?
I wish I could. I can't sit here today and characterize them in that manner. That's something that I don't have a basis of knowledge for on that type of intimate detail on the cases. That Judge Walsh, the presiding judge, he might be able to do that. I'm not comfortable doing that. I just don't have the basis of knowledge to do it fairly.
Is there a way to say this can only take 2 years total in environmental court? Like this can't, you can't file yet another appeal, I mean, is there a timeline limit right now? Is there a way that?
There's no specific, there's no, we'll call it drop dead date.
Mhm.
This is it. You have to go there. To the extent that we have those types of orders, it really is something that comes from the court in terms of case management to say, no more delays. We're going to trial, we're going to do that. And that does occur. The problem you run into whenever you try to address case flow through always and nevers in the judicial system is, well, always works until there's that one time that it should be no. We all have those times that we could agree. What would happen, for instance, if the developer who's critical for the project was suddenly had a heart attack and they were at the last period of that drop dead date, no pun intended, bad analogy. But they were towards the end of it, and the judge said, well, I'm sorry, you're in the hospital, you can't be here, we have to shut the case down. And so that degree of discretion and flexibility is inherent in the system and it needs to be there. But that doesn't mean that judges in the environmental division can't have what I will call a renewed interest in making sure that we tighten things up. And I know that Judge Walsh and Judge Durkin have had interest in that. And I know that that's something that we've discussed recently, that we are going to look at that. And I know they want to really focus on that. What can we tighten up? How can we move things along quicker? And there are those times, again, where the attorneys may both come in and say, hey, Judge, we both want time. So, Senator, you have the developer telling you, this is taking so long. And I can pretty much bet that there may be cases where the developers would be out saying to people, well, this is taking too long. And yet their attorney has been the one in court saying, we need more time, Judge.
Yeah. And I'm not saying
Yeah.
it's solely this developer. What I'm saying is, as a policymaker, and I look at the fact of what we need to have happen in Vermont is housing. And time is an integral factor in housing. And as a policymaker, I look at a year or 2 years to go through an Act 250 process as too long, as too long. It is contrary to the policy goal that we have and the need that we as a state have to get at. And so the question is, what can we do about it?
Well, I think that if we have, we talked about this last year about another judge, when there was talk about, well, do we add a judge for a limited period to the environmental division?
Right.
And that was not something that would really work because when you talk about training, getting someone up to speed, things like that, it really wouldn't have gotten us where we need to be. But adding a judge as a policymaker, that is something that will make a difference in every one of our divisions, including
How
the
much is the
environmental.
appropriation request for that?
300, I believe, with the judge and law clerk, I think the total may have been about 344. For that specifically, I could check. I should have that here.
I mean, I think to add to what Senator Brock is saying, people are coming to us asking to be exempt from this whole process, or they're building their project to be exempt. They feel like something is fundamentally broken, where they're entering into a system that they have no consistency, no control over the outcome, no control over the timeline. And so they're trying their best to avoid this system. And I imagine, as a judge, that's hard to hear. This seems so patently unfair to people that they want to avoid it any way they can.
Well, that's the
And
other
that's a
issue.
sad thing for the judiciary.
We see people who are not developing things because Vermont is perceived as an environment that's just too unfavorable to take the chance of something that lacks certainty and perhaps lacks consistency. And that's not, I'm not saying that that's the judiciary's fault by any means, it's not. Part of it is the fact that some of our Act 250 requires subjectivity on the part of the various people who look at it, and the judgment is in their eyes. And that's a concern too. And so I'm trying to look at not just the piece that, hey, let's add an additional judge or do something in the court. I'm looking at overall, what are the things that we could do to get this done faster?
Well,
Or change what it is that we're asking folks to do so that there's additional clarity and also certainty that if you file an application and you do A, B, C, D, and E as required, then you will know what the end result will be within a predictable period of time.
The difficulty with with trying to have that type of certainty, if we say, okay, you file A, B, C, and D, is that your view of filing A, B, C, and D may differ from Senator Clarkson's view of what A, B, C, and D needs to be, and that's where the disputes arise. And I would suggest that when we look at consistency, and I firmly agree that transparency, consistency, stability are all things that we need to have. Clarity, exactly, are things that we need to have. I actually think that having the cases determined by the environmental division provide all of that. And the question that, as I am seeing it from what we're talking about today, and as I'm leaving here, is going to be, okay, we add a judge, we can add some things here, but what are the other, if you will, points that, I was gonna say pain points, but really,
Okay.
that we look at and go, where are things getting bogged down? And how can we address them? And I will.
And I think it's the timeline, it's also, if they go through the timeline and they are brought back down to the density that they would have been at if they not gone through the process at all. It just data would be really helpful before we're done with this bill. I don't know, this week, what percentage of the cases are housing related, you know,
Right.
what is like the max time in court someone can spend or has spent.
How many cases are
Yeah.
actually housing related? I mean,
Yeah,
and actually all the statistics about Act 250 are actually the, like, huge percent go through
Yeah.
in a very short period of time.
Yes.
So
I don't know what very.
in all fairness, yeah, I mean,
It's
they
just
do. I
those
mean,
that don't.
Right.
that we're
I
concerned
know,
about.
they're the ones we hear about, but in fact, it moves pretty well until there are challenges to some of these things. So it would be helpful for us, I think, Judge, to have an understanding of the character of the cases, at how many are housing, how many have appeals that, you know, what are the character of the appeals, stuff like that. That would be helpful, I think.
And just a quick aside also, and that is the issue of the availability of judges. Does Vermont's judicial retirement age enter into this, and is it too short?
Our retirement age mandatory is 90 now.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Sounds all right.
Ring walk.
I know.
Doyle can still
It's
serve.
not to some, they may think, some may believe that's too short.
Yeah.
I look at it and think, yes, I think I can accomplish what I
Okay.
seek to
Wisdom,
do.
remember, we equate wisdom with age.
That's right.
But we also have returnships, Randy.
Yeah,
have a
we do.
bunch
I
of
know that.
Judges
I
coming
know
back
that.
to help,
Yeah.
which is great.
We've been using quite a few of the retired judges to be able to assist us. And that's been very helpful in trying to meet the issues that we're facing.
Good.
And I can, 1 second here, I can get you the exact number. Senator, 344,136 was the number, so.
Oh, for in the budget.
Yeah, I was off by 136.
No, that's fine. We round anyway, generally.
And what do you think that would result in, adding that additional judge? What,
That's
in
not
terms of
speaking E-court.
what would happen to the judiciary? What would you be able to do that you can't do now? I guess is the question.
Meet more of the deadlines that have been imposed, whether it's through statutes or just the pressures of case filings. Whether it's in the criminal, family, or civil division, we'd be able to address all the dockets. We have that extra resource to be able to help us everywhere. And it really has been. We've testified before the budget committee, appropriations and judiciary committees about, this is an all hands on deck approach that we're taking. And that all hands on deck includes the environmental division. It's not a situation where we're saying, well, it's just the other divisions, we need to worry there. No, all divisions need our attention because they all are interrelated in what we're trying to accomplish with our policies here in Vermont.
Right.
Well, I think last question.
Just do the municipal and the Act 250 and A&R automatically go together if they're dealing with the same subjects, or would you pull one in? if the
They
person
are,
hadn't-
they are brought up at the same time, I believe, as connected cases, I think is the phrase.
Okay,
They're not brought into the same case, but the judge would be handled, the same judge would be handling both.
okay, so there's coordination.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I certainly we appreciate the reminder that the faster you create housing, the easier it is for people to get out of jail, reunite with their kids, all kinds of other things that are important to us. I think I'll remind our caucus of that today as well. So do our best to advocate for the additional positions that you're requesting.
Thank you.
I think frankly, what we're looking at a lot of in this bill is exemptions to the Act 250 process. And, hopefully one day we can get to the point where we can have a longer discussion, study how to make it, a standard timeline and get rid of some of the duplication. But absent that, certainly this has given us a lot to think about and to respond to others who really want to see less time in court. I'll let Senator Cummings up with this word and then.
In COVID threw a wrench into the entire judicial process, and you're still struggling to make up from that. We write the law. The law is the law. By the time it gets to court, the court says yes or no. It abides by the law. But I think the one thing that may be different here is you have to have standing. Somebody off the street can't come in and appeal in my child custody case just because they don't like me. But you can live 2 towns over or a town over, and that's where you get to people that have money, and it's the fear of that keeps, even though it may not be a realistic fear. I can tell you, the city of Montpelier did not extend the sidewalks on Berlin Street because to extend them another 50 feet or something to the town line would have gotten us into the acreage that met Act 250. And we had a neighbor that wasn't happy. And so there aren't sidewalks.
Right.
That is such a sad loss of public necessity.
But the street was in such bad shape, the ambulance wouldn't drive up it because they couldn't do CPR as it bounced over the potholes. So you make those decisions. And I think the court needs enough judges. But we need to make sure that the law is contained enough so that it doesn't get dragged out any longer than it needs to. And I think maybe we've set it up so that any citizen can have a voice in this, that it drags out.
Can you send us the list of who can appeal?
Well, I think that was one of our questions that we asked earlier too, is just to get a sense of the character of the appeals from Judge Walsh and Judge
And the
Durkin.
full list of who can appeal, I think would be, we're looking at that in another realm from the municipal side, but okay, thank you.
Well, thank you
Thanks
very
so
much. I
much,
very
Judge.
much appreciate it. And I would leave you with, when you have any questions or concerns, if you hear about specific matters, why is this case or that case? I can't get involved in specific cases, but that doesn't mean you should not contact me and say, hey, Judge, is this case taking unduly long, or what's going on
This
here?
is an outlier.
Yeah, I can look into things.
Yeah.
And I do, in going forward, I want to let you know very strongly, I believe that what I said, and that is all of our divisions are critical. And we need to make sure the environmental division has as much, because housing, we hear it everywhere. And it really is an issue for the citizens of Vermont right now. And so anything that we can do to assist in connection with judicial resources towards the environmental division or fixing roadblocks there or bottlenecks, we'll need to do. And that leads me to Senator Brock. You mentioned you were doing some work to look into other states. I would very much be interested. I really appreciate it, because if another state has something they're doing that we can look at, it's going to help us do it better. By all means, we want to do it better.
And maybe that's a study we can commission and fund, simply because I think we all want to know that, and someone will have to do the work. And I don't know.
But we'll have the results from this. So
If I can be of any assistance looking into those types of matters, please let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here today.
It's nice to have you in this committee. It's a rare thing.
It is. I don't get over here very much. And
Come again.
I feel bad. I didn't wear red. It's Valentine's Day.
It's okay.
Okay.
But we'll get there.
Well,
Thank you.
Senator Chittenden made up for everybody.
Why? What has he done?
He's wearing pink.
I know. That's great.
He came in on Wear Red Day too.
I just want to be sure, Julio, I don't have you on the schedule today. Okay.
I just wanted to hear where the housing bill was.
Oh, great. Okay, here it is. So,
Julio.
Ellen, thanks for coming over. Thanks for your patience.
It's good to see Julio in the flesh, which we have not
Before
seen
I
for
left
a
for
while.
the floor, there was like, there might not have been an integration between
Goodbye,
David's
Tom. Good to
piece
see
and
you.
your piece, you know? No, there. So we have 7.2, is that what we have?
So Ellen Chakowski, Office of Legislative Counsel.
David emailed me something that said, here's 7.2.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
7.2 was drafted by all three of us.
Okay, so you have not you have it, but 7.2 is the one we'd all be looking at.
Yes, but I thought you wanted to approve it before you posted it.
Oh, yes. that's
I
probably
just
what
want, what I do definitely want to do is make sure that it's all three of your work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, because I've still got under David
I'm
Hall
gonna go ahead
6.1.
and
Right, that's, and that would be great to have a.
it is on
on
me
paper
if
copy.
there is something out, out of left field in there, but let's print 7.2 and post it.
So
Oh, you don't have it. Okay.
I would just also add that I did make an Act 250 chart for you,
Oh my God, I'm making.
But it's in my pocket.
but it's only on 6.1. And 7.2 has a number of
Yeah.
significant
Yeah, I was
changes.
gonna say.
So
that's
we
not
can
big.
wait until maybe tomorrow.
So, yeah, I just didn't know how you wanted to handle. it.
Right. Well, let's go through the language and
Oh, they
we can
finally
pause
got
on the
into my
summary
calendar.
until such time. 7.2, okay.
They have
Oh.
finally gotten to Washington County. I've had 100 emails on S5 and not one of them has been from Washington County. These are all
Yeah,
S.
yeah.
Yes.
It's, for
Oh,
some
no.
unknown reason, S5 is coming in through the Sergeant at Arms office.
No,
I'm
I've
getting
gotten
everywhere.
100
People are calling.
I've
emails,
gotten
all the
over 100
same.
emails and then
Yeah.
I got, a whole bunch of phone calls
Yeah.
too.
Oh, it's not.
I think
But
the
interesting.
Mercer
Mercer
County
County
whoever's
uses
organizing
so-
it needs
Yeah.
to learn about sending
Environmental
emails
issues.
by county.
Well, this
Because
is,
I just started.
this is Ellen's reprieve from S5 in here.
So how? do
So
we
we're
wanna
We're
really
getting
work in
a
it?
7.2 printed for everyone.
Okay.
Okay.
And
That's where I
posted.
am when I'm not here.
7.2 question mark.
Right, yes, and we'll just say for anybody watching, we just, it's for the sake of transparency, we'll get it out there. It's a lot of things that we discussed last week, and I can't
Should we
foresee
take
something.
2 seconds then
Yeah.
and, while Tony prints them? The copy.
Oh, the copy guy, oh, I didn't know what you mean, okay.
It'll take a minute or two. How do you want to?
Print one for me by any chance? Thank you. I don't have it because I
Yeah.
didn't know if this was.
No, that's totally fair. I can just, we can just take a breath and just, I'll say that there's, in my mind, there are still a few outstanding issues that won't be reflected in this draft, and we can make sure we have the same understanding. Senator Harrison has some other changes that she's proposing, and I don't know if this is true, but Senator Harrison, I hope you'd also look at the VLCT comments to see if there's anything you think we can integrate. Senator Brock has a concern he shared with the committee that we're still mulling over about how to create some kind of timeline predictability and shortening in the system. And we have some people who sent ideas for that, and we've heard more about it today.
And and I have some questions I just need to chat with Ellen about, which I didn't get to yesterday, so I apologize.
Okay.
And I am going to my local planning commission in Barrytown tomorrow night.
Okay.
And
Oh, lucky
they
you.
are very unhappy with this bill.
I was trying.
Oh, are they?
Yes,
Tomorrow's my husband's birthday, otherwise I'd say it
it seems to
get
be,
yelled at.
other than we're taking their authority away from them, and I'll probably remind them, we gave them the authority in the first place. but I don't know, I'll say
Right.
that. But it's the duplex,
Yeah.
Duplex issue.
yeah.
Well, that, I feel like I have tried to say that isn't local versus state, that's local versus homeowner flexibility
We
and
haven't
freedom.
taken
you know,
away
that-
their design review though, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's not the two big brick boxes. They
Right.
can require that it look like all those, and they have huge developments like that in
Mhm.
town.
And they're all on water and sewer, right? It's duplex by right
Well,
on water.
No, duplex by right is everywhere.
everywhere.
Multifamily beyond that is.
If it's not
water,
just
sewer with
designated
exceptions.
downtown.
Yeah.
Right, that's why we need the
Yeah.
chart,
Now,
because
some of
that,
these towns are on Barry Sewer and Barry Town Water.
Interesting.
What specifically do they not like?
The duplexes is.
Because
the duplex by
why?
right is a big move.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
I haven't.
I
done
think it's
that.
valuable.
Against.
I think
Big
they
one.
still have areas of town, probably without water and sewer, that have 2 acre, that kind of zoning. And then they have some really clustered developments that are not in designated, there's no downtown near them. I mean, it's a big sprawled out, it circles pretty much the city of Barry, and Berlin circles the other half.
Right.
But a lot of Vermont towns are like that. And it's, I think it's going to just take some talking through. But I know allowing the duplexes, and I can look up the email, is one of the things they were just, I mean,
It
the
is-
fact that we're taking
Yeah.
away the power of local planning and zoning.
Yeah. I mean, remember, that's all Maine could get done was duplexing by right. It is a significant change, and
I know,
heard it doesn't, rush on duplexing everywhere,
that's not gonna make that,
Yeah.
No,
to tell them Maine did
Let's
it.
face it, it's gonna take 3 years to do it.
so
I mean,
in your chart,
not to pass it.
if water and
To make
sewer
it happen. It is a 2 year.
by right everywhere, remember, even with duplex by right, you still have to perk, you still have to have even if you're not on water and sewer, you still have to have enough water and sewer, water capacity and sewage capacity to be able to do it. I mean, right, I mean,
Right, the
What
towns, as it's phrased currently in the bill, it's not dependent. It's phrased as served by sewer and water, and so
sorry, it's what,
And that's the multi.
served, yes, for up to 4 dwellings.
right,
as an allowed
that's
use.
water and sewer.
It's served by sewer and water infrastructure, which is not currently a defined term in the bill, however, didn't require the town to actually approve a connection, and so if, for example, if a town doesn't have capacity on the municipal infrastructure, there's the ability to add private or septic-based alternative system, they could still.
Right, so that's for everybody who's not on water and sewer.
If you take
You
a
still have to be
4-bedroom
expected to
home,
have enough, and you build a new home to do that, you still have to be able to have a well and a septic system that deals with a duplex.
right, I mean, that's new build. If you take an existing 4-bedroom home and cut it in half, chances are you most likely have the capacity anyway, because it was a home designed for
You may or may not.
more than 2 people.
Right, and the town still maintains its regular level of review that it would apply normally to a single family house. So like some of the design elements.
Yeah. You could have a single family home that has 8 people in it, and nobody's sort
You
of
could.
creaking in their house to see if they have enough capacity. Okay, we're still pausing for the bill. Okay.
Yes, so will you,
Anything
will you say for me again what the plan is for today?
Yeah, thank you.
I think the only thing that would be super valuable in 7.2 is if new things are highlighted.
Yes.
Okay, so if that's the case, I think we'd start going through the highlighted sections to start looking at the changes probably
Just from the beginning?
from 6.1.
Right, but starting with section 1?
Yes.
You want me to put it on the screen for now, or we
Sure, yes, and then,
And do you want to discuss the VLCT suggestions?
I think.
It's just 3 pages, so it
Okay.
might be a good one to just
I think we can do that outside of.
Oh,
committee.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's more digest it and bring it into the committee as a succinct, like as an amendment if we're moving forward with it. Anything from here on should hope just be language form ready to insert into the bill if we like it.
And I think VNRC is also responding. Have you seen anything from Brian?
I've seen which sections they like and don't like. I haven't seen any
No, but I
changes.
thought they were also.
They were gonna get us data, but I don't remember them saying they had changes.
Did everyone get the VLCT memo? Because it is in
Did it come
format of
today?
changes. No, I think was it over the weekend?
I didn't see it.
I think it was over the weekend.
I would say let's keep that discussion offline for now
Okay,
and just focus on what we have changed before
okay.
we add. I mean, I think anything now will have to be digested by someone on this committee to Ledge Council, because even if they propose something, anyone proposes something, it's, I want Ledge Council to have the opportunity to workshop it with a member of this committee before it's proposed to the whole committee. Maybe we should get it up on the board. I don't know what's happening. Tell me.
And I found the letter from Barrington.
Okay.
Okay. Their concerns are the town's ability to require more than one parking space per dwelling, eliminates one of the most common conditional use criteria and character of the area, requires the bylaws to allow a minimum of 2 family dwellings everywhere housing is allowed, prohibits controlling the height of multifamily structures, and takes away where emergency shelters can be placed, along with a host of others. So they're the ones we've come up with.
So they don't like any of those.
No.
Well, that's
But
narrow.
we have, I mean, character of the neighborhood, we have limited.
Yeah.
You can't appeal on
Right.
character, but we haven't
Taken it away.
We haven't taken it away,
Yeah.
the town, but if the town finds
Mm-hmm.
some unrelated person can't appeal the town,
Right, exactly.
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Know that we have to get a little, if you're putting up a 5-bedroom house, you might want to have the ability to require more than one space, but
Right.
we know that. We haven't taken away all control to eliminate the height. Otherwise, we'd have a 13-story building.
Yeah. And we actually changed that in the bill.
It was
So
proposed.
we, some of our changes are to address concerns we've heard where people feel like a
Okay.
complete lack of agency. So we can start walking through it and wait for our printed copies.
So is it, where is it?
Well, it's up there.
Oh,
Everyone has.
It's
that.
posted.
Is it on our-
Get it.
can we look at it on our,
Just have to refresh. It should be on our page.
okay.
Should be on our
Right.
page.
Okay. $7.2. There we go. Okay.
Okay,
Okay, thank you, Ellen.
yes, so posted on your website today under David Hall's name is draft 7.2.
Actually, it's got both your initials on it.
But it's posted under his
I
name.
know.
It does have both of our initials on it.
It does have both your
I
initials.
can orient anyone on the website. Draft 7.2.
And I make notes.
Thank you.
The changes are highlighted. So I will start on page 1. The first change is the change to the title of the bill.
Chair's artistic vision here.
Yes.
So people see what it spells.
How about just housing opportunities for everyone? instead
Well,
of
I hope
paying
you see what it spells, because that would be a very different acronym.
HOME, cute. Okay.
you would delete the word made. Is that right?
But then it would,
She needs made for her
And then it spells
acronym.
something very different than home. I'm not gonna say.
agriculture.
Oh, wait
It's
till
only how you
Bobby
pronounce
Starr
it.
gets a hold of this.
Then you could get, this is the home.
He'll be back to having
This is the
farmers
home
be able to buy apartment buildings downtown.
I can't, it's just funny. to think
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
Okay,
No change has been made to section 1. Section 1 is the parking section.
yep. And that, I've had red flag.
Yeah,
We heard,
I have all the options, but I'm waiting to see if someone I can share the options I've collected that have come up
One
or.
point, have we heard more than, how many options have we heard on this?
I have a list of
You have
3.
Three, I
Which-
have one.
Things related to bedrooms and.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
1.25, 1.5, either of those with a step back, transition plan back to 1, with some kind of other, transportation plan in the works in a few years. Remember, this bill doesn't take effect, most of it doesn't take effect for 2 years anyway, so.
It would take
That-
years to get the permit anyway.
Right, so, and then,
thank you.
or a differential in if it's a larger building or a fewer unit.
Oh, it's so warm.
So,
But, I mean, downtown Waterbury, downtown Montpelier, where there is some limited public
Mhm.
transport.
right,
Thank you.
But
so,
places like Barrytown or Callis, no. So
does Berrytown have a tight parking?
it's big and spread out, no.
Yeah.
I think that's just, it's one of those, I mean, the town offices are up on the top of the hill with the granite quarries, with the school and the industrial park. Then there's Graniteville that has the slag heaps, and that is its own kind of area. There's Websterville, which has the Christian school, and again, a cluster of housing.
Mhm,
These are all these are all worker housing for the granite quarries.
mhm.
And then you go down to, now that's that's Barrytown, now South Barry, which has the road to the interstate, and East Barry, which is again a cluster of houses down the hill from the granite quarries. And then you get over up the hill from Barry, where you can walk down a neighborhood street and cross the town line with no indication. And they have put up Wildersburg Common, which are model condos where there's actually like 2 housing units and the garages adjust. And they put up a whole bunch new cluster housing like that across the street from what are probably 3 acre zoning. Because they're big houses on lots of land.
Yeah,
Um,
so I'd look to you, Senator Cummings, you flagged a section for all you could talk to.
I will find out.
Folks
I
and see
think
if they
maybe
want-
it's being told because in some of the more dense areas that they would like,
Right,
but I think we've heard that you're building a 5-bedroom house, you're gonna have a driveway. I think we've heard that some flexibility is needed, just saying one in a really dense area with no public transportation.
and that's one as a, required, not. a developer
Right,
could
but not all developers are in it for the public good.
say- Right,
The less space you have, the less parking spaces, the more dense, the more money you don't have to invest, so. I do one.
So maybe we need a chart, because you're right, I started to list all the parking options, and maybe we just need a chart, and we just need to devote some time to just talking about through the options. So, because it strikes me, it looks sort of like your Act 250 chart, Ellen. If one parking, what would we have to have in place? Municipal parking options or transportation options, or?
That's a bit of a stretch to ask Ledge Council.
No, I mean, I'm not asking, I
Okay.
said like,
Okay.
I didn't
Yeah.
ask her to do it.
Okay.
I said like her thing, that shows us the options within each, if 1.5, if 2,
Then what though? Like what?
Okay,
then we'd have to have, if we want to just limit it to one parking, one car per spot, per.
But then what happens? Like, I don't know what this chart says.
So it would be conditioned on, if there is municipal parking available, if there is transportation available.
Oh, I see.
Condition,
So in the
Condition
bill, condition.
you know, but, you know, the minute
I
we
mean, there's
start
one-
trying to define
one idea.
everything, we're leaving something
If you have
out.
municipal
Yeah.
transportation, yeah, the bus runs once a day.
But I can't walk to the grocery store. And having had to ration how many cans I could carry home when I had to walk a mile to the
Mhm.
grocery store. And that was a nice flat sidewalk mile. And I was young and healthy in those days.
So again, some of what we've heard is either we could, and we can do this by consensus or take a vote, however people feel that, we could look at a 1.25 or 1.5. We could look at 1.5, but it tapers down, with the transportation plan, or we could look at different building sizes and.
Building sizes, the number of
1.5.
bedrooms. and
Yeah.
there are
Yeah,
A number of factors that are involved.
yeah, if you're doing studio apartments, that's one thing. If you're doing 3-bedroom apartments, and it says, or accessory dwelling unit. So if I put in an
Yeah.
accessory dwelling unit on Barry Street,
Mhm.
which is where the parking issues are, or Elm Street.
Right,
So
so it's per dwelling unit, it could be a
So
duplex,
okay,
two,
so, all
ADU,
right.
two,
all right, so that makes
Yeah.
it better.
yeah.
Per dwelling unit, all right. I think if we do 1.5.
Okay. I,
I don't know,
You
you,
build a house,
Well-
how am I gonna put in half of a
well,
parking
they
space?
round, a lot of this, the towns know how to, they'll round up, I think.
Well, I'm thinking about
Yeah.
my permit,
Right,
you know,
like
how,
if you
how,
have it.
how, and, is my permit gonna give me 1.5 parking spaces, or is it gonna give me either 1 or 2?
It's gonna round,
you have a car and then a mini car,
right? They're gonna,
Accessory
so
car.
it
an
does
accessory
say,
car.
I don't,
It's subordinate.
I'm just
to
trying to
your
understand how
Yeah.
something like that would work, though, for the individual applicant.
yeah,
they do round, no matter how many dwelling units.
yeah,
that
but
means two.
5 goes.
Yeah, my understanding was they round up, but I don't wanna, we could ask the VLCT or something, but.
Well, what's the
asked that
purpose
question.
of doing 1.5 as opposed to 2?
Provides flexibility for planners.
And especially in multifamily,
Right.
makes a big deal. Makes
And a
deal.
big, yeah, multifamily, I perhaps can understand it.
Yeah, and,
That's where it
and
comes in.
1.25 is what I've heard as more acceptable,
Okay,
that you don't have to go to 1.5. And I think we should really consider that would be a big change, going to 1.5. And then
Right.
I do have some other
Okay.
potential language.
for this section,
Oh, yeah,
let's stick with the
okay.
number for a second, so then I am curious, if you did 1.25, I wonder if there's a something 0.25 if it gets rounded down, or a 0.75 it gets rounded up. I just wanna make sure,
I think that's what would
I
happen.
have to answer that question, someone has to answer that question.
Right, well, this
on the
language
floor.
would keep the
Yeah.
1 per parking space, but give the municipality some wiggle room. Or
This
or
would-
one
this would come
parking
into
space per
play
unit, I'm
Where
sorry.
you get into trouble is a single-family house. What's
Yeah.
1.25? A lot, it sounds like, I mean, Montpelier got into a lot of trouble because, not a lot of trouble. You couldn't park behind, you had to have, now they've changed that. But that's more problematic. I've got 2 parking spaces I've got 2 apartments, that's fine, but they didn't allow you to park behind. So, you know, you got a 2 parking space, but it's deep enough so that you could fit 4 cars in. That, so if you only allowed 1 parking space but allowed people to stack it, then you've cleared up a lot. The 1.25 would come in for bigger groups, because when you've got 4 units, then you're gonna get that extra space.
Right.
Right.
We could say if there's a decimal amount, I don't know how we frame this, but if it's 0.25 or above, it just gets rounded out.
Rounded down.
You want to round down for 0.25. I'm just saying, let's say you now.
That's
have
to me, that's the point of doing it. Like, otherwise you might as well do 1.5.
But so if you have 1.25 and somehow you ended up with like.
You run 1.25, it's going down.
16.25, you could just say you can have 17.
That's the kind of
1.25.
detail we should think about that a bit,
Okay.
because,
So there's a proposal on the table for 1.25 and we have to figure out the rounding. There's a 1.5 is still out in the universe. We can talk about both and just come back to this.
And the other
I'll just tell them
option-
it's still a work in progress and see what their problem is with it.
That's fair,
Because
yeah.
they do not have a highly congested downtown.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
perhaps Montpelier, or we envy downtown Barry's parking, but.
right, and if it's the control issue, there's a idea to do not more than 1 parking space unless the appropriate municipal panel determines that inadequate public transit and public parking scarcity contributes to traffic congestion, illegal parking locations, and safety concerns.
And then maybe they could go to 1.5. Maybe we can still be.
Or they can
specific.
make a case for something more than 1, and that's for requiring
I like
more than
that.
1. Again, you can allow
That
more
gives
than
them
1.
the flexibility if,
When you say make a case, though, what does that mean?
It would mean the appropriate municipal panel, so that would be the planning commission or the DRB or whoever is reviewing it.
Reviewing an application, so probably the DRB or Board of Adjustment would need to justify in the permit decision.
requiring 2
Yeah.
or 1.5.
And it,
Because there's no place to park around it. There's no bus. It's up on a hill, and I'm thinking of Springfield, where a lot of the development is up. The school is up.
I think if you're saying 1.5 is a lot, a lot of places are already at 1.5. Maybe it could be, that's still the cap, that if you make a case, you could do 1.5.
oh,
But
so we
you
have
can't
2
just
now.
do you have to 4 space, you know what I mean?
The norm is 1, but you can go up to 1.5 or 1.25 if the board finds that
That could work.
it might not have sidewalks. It might,
So I would just add that this section, the parking section, is in the by right section. And so potentially you could build out that section with that language. I mean, I think it could go in section 1, but it also could just go in the by right section as
Okay.
well, as like another reason they would need to have.
Oh, that might make sense.
yeah.
The issue here we're talking about is what the municipality can require. It's not so much what the market requires. Because, you have so many people who are couples, the kind of people who are moving to Vermont, let's say, to take jobs at UVM Medical Center and so on, and are 2-car couples because they both work and they work in different places. And to restrict them to 1 or 1.25 parking spaces is just not practical. And when you apply that to a development as a whole, composed to some extent of like people, 1 parking space,
But
unless you're
that's-
downtown, doesn't work.
But I think the issue is with lower income housing, subsidized housing.
Subsidized housing.
Because if the market, I'm thinking of my doctor whose wife works at UVM, he works at CVH a couple days a week in UVM. They live in Waterbury. but they need 2 cars.
Mhm.
And now they've got teenage kids and they may not be around in the morning to drive them the 5 miles to Harwood unless you would like the kids walking. So the kids have a car. They're probably not living on Barry Street or in downtown Waterbury. They're probably living up in the hill where the new houses are. And there the market would demand probably that you have a 2-car garage and that
You can park on the
housing
street if there's a car that's their house.
and the house,
fine.
yeah, and the market is going to drive that. The issue really is lower income people who have nobody wants and they get.
No. Hopefully not. Nobody, often the votes show that
That's
people
where
are
the
happy with it.
no one ever gets really upset about a high unless it's McMansions. But it's the lower income housing units that are going to get
Smushed.
smushed into downtown.
Right.
Everybody
yeah.
likes senior housing, nobody likes low income housing.
Right. And sometimes, you know.
Except the people who actually are living.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about towns. I've been on the regional
Well,
planning
small
commission
minorities, I
housing.
think.
I've been on a legislative housing committee.
It's the one that comes under fire.
It's the one that
That
comes
gets
under
scrutinized.
fire.
And where we would probably see parking requirements weaponized against a community where frankly, those are, I mean, we know that a quarter of Vermonters are not car reliant. They actually they can't afford to take a car everywhere. They need
Right.
another option. So we are talking about
Exactly.
achieving
They all
density,
live in
not
Chittenden
punishing
County.
people for having fewer cars.
And just one more comment on that.
Yeah.
The higher required parking numbers can prohibit redevelopment of really
Yes.
important buildings,
Mhm.
so that those buildings are continuing to deteriorate because it doesn't pencil out and you physically can't put additional parking on them.
Right.
So that's where I've seen
Yeah.
that be a real problem.
And we've heard in the dense areas, they're saying, okay, we're gonna buy a chunk of this garage that's a couple blocks away, you know, if it is
Right.
a question
Yeah.
of rehabbing it. you know.
That's the New York City model.
So let's all dwell on one, except in certain circumstances, and then do we want to make it 1.25 and 1.5, and perhaps the 1.25 versus 0.5 decision will be guided a little bit more by the rounding question.
Yeah, I like Wendy's
That
wording
language.
because it doesn't just say, I don't care. It says, this is the norm unless be,
And then maybe we'll have a transportation bill that says you have to have better public transit.
Yeah, and
all it takes is money.
Yes.
Or we could say that this is something that is best decided as a local decision and not deal with it at all. And I wouldn't
Well,
throw that out at this point.
okay, I mean, the
Because I'm
point of the
very
bill is.
concerned
to-
about micromanaging everything, based on our guesstimate of a quarter of a car with not a whole lot of evidence
Is
behind
that
it.
a compact car or an electric
Yeah.
car?
I mean, it's with not a whole lot of evidence behind it as to how that meets the need in the communities across the state.
I mean, I think we heard even in Montpelier, they're at 1.5, right?
Well, they
So-
have nothing downtown. Montpelier has done a 365-degree change.
Mhm.
We lost the doctor who wanted to keep his office downtown, bought a building that had been housing, and he got hit with this $2,000 parking impact fee, which we were going to bank so that someday we could build a parking garage. Well, it's 30 years later and we've not built a parking garage. But it made it, for those folks who can't take the bus or drive it's nice to have a doctor downtown.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
In what was a low income neighborhood.
Right.
I don't know if Montpelier's come full circle. I don't know that this is a problem anymore.
Well, I'm just taking an example of a dense community that still is you know, having this conversation, and even they were at 1.5, and most of the planners.
Well, in some spots, they were at 1.5.
Right,
But I think
Having the language that says
Yeah.
unless the
there's some
municipal
reason,
panel
you can't
determines.
just do it to keep,
Yeah. Allow
Things out.
at least the steam to escape.
yeah.
flexibility.
I think flexibility is key.
And then somebody from the other side of town can't appeal that on basis that it hurts the character of the neighborhood.
Right, right. This is progress. That was a good discussion.
This is probably the trickiest,
Yeah, it's one of the trickier.
the one that the planners have brought up, that the
Mhm.
communities, this.
Yeah.
Because the towns are left with what do you do with the cars?
Mhm.
You can't plow the streets.
Right.
Well, that's why some of it for me is contingent on what have towns done to plan for municipal parking independent of housing. I mean, so that it's close but not tied to it.
You get our downtowns, which are frequently built at the bottom of the hills. And half of it, there is limited space to do that. And the towns got built before there were cars.
Right. Which is why I think Senator Harrison point is a good one. When you try to redevelop and then you say this doesn't work because
Yeah.
parking wasn't the same
Yeah.
I
question.
love going out west where the streets are wide enough to have two cars pass.
I don't miss the traffic there.
I don't either.
miss the traffic. But, where you can't get two cars and have one parked on the side
Right.
because
They were made for cars and that's
they
a whole
were,
nother
that's right. And
problem.
in the Northeast, at least, the old East Coast,
Right.
the cities were not built for cars.
Right.
But they were built for horses. And in fact, many of our downtowns have carriage houses as a result and spaces where those
And
animals were
wildlife.
accommodated in our downtown.
Right, but they didn't have parking for the horse.
They were like animal
Yep.
parking garages.
Yes,
They were living spaces for the horse, that's right.
yes, but the carriage,
Well, I don't think we've gotten anything more.
Okay, so we're still on page one and we're at 1.25, I think.
Yeah,
What do I hear? 1.25, going.
we're gonna dwell, we're gonna.
we're going with
I
Wendy's.
thought we were gonna try to stay at one
Oh,
because
okay. I'm
that hasn't gotten a lot of pushback until now with the added language.
But this
about
allows
the
the
municipal
flexibility.
panel.
Right, and we're gonna let it, we're gonna talk to each other and our folks about 1.25 or 1.5.
And then are we going to come back to this section? Because I have some transit amenities language, but I don't know for sure that it would need to be in this section. It might be better in a different section, but I don't want to give up the opportunity to talk
I'll
about it.
let Ellen, I don't know if she's seen it, or we should let you two answer questions together before.
Or we can just talk. I just want to,
You
put
flagging
a-
that you have
okay.
a transit.
Okay,
Yes.
I
Which we
still, I
appreciate.
still,
Is it a
this
transit?
one, maybe we could let Ellen get past page 1.
I love that, Madam Chair, my afternoon committee.
And I've got this one flagged, that's
Yes.
my stand, this
Yes,
one's still
it's
not
flagged.
I
decided.
hope
Okay.
they don't have to appeal this bill to the environmental court.
Well, I
Hopefully
think
not.
if we can limit the appeals
Right.
based on character of the neighborhood as decided by someone who doesn't live there.
Right. That's exactly right. Thank you for distilling that. So we're flagging that Senator Harrison
Thank
has other language that she's gonna propose once she's had a chance to talk about it, budget council.
So on page 2, section 2. Section 2, you'll recall, has multiple provisions related to density. So there's a change down on line 19.
I think this should help your folks. Yeah, but we'll see.
So there's a couple of things that happened, and these suggestions actually came from multiple witnesses, so they have been combined. But I think it is easy to understand. So in any district, down on line 19, that allows year-round residential development, duplexes shall be an allowed use with the same dimensional standards as a single-family dwelling unit. So the new language is in yellow, year round has been added.
Okay, so you won't, we've got non-conforming lots on lakes that,
Mhm.
yeah, if they
And
have.
camps in the mountains.
Oh, yeah, they have septic tanks, they're lucky.
Right,
So, but they're seasonal.
yeah.
So this wouldn't allow somebody to rent, sublet half of their camp.
Can't turn it into a duplex.
Right.
That's, yeah.
Yes. They can probably rent
Okay.
out their camp and,
All right,
you know,
that won't
there's,
help, that would help
issues.
Woodbury, all right.
well, the second part, but who knows?
So then there's a couple other things happening here. So duplexes is highlighted. In the prior draft, it was duplex or accessory dwelling unit isn't allowed use. And this came from one of the planners as striking accessory dwelling unit because the next page actually addresses the dwelling unit section specifically. And based on the conversation we've been having about the difference in these two terms, I think that this just makes it more clear that accessory dwelling units in whole are addressed on the next page.
Right.
Okay, with the same dimensional standards.
Yes.
So that means if I've got a 50-foot by 50-foot standard for single-family house,
Yes.
that doesn't mean I get to put two 50-foot by 50-foot houses. I can take that dimension and divide it in half or whatever, but I have the same lot coverage.
Right. If you're in a new build area that allows 7,000 square foot homes, they have
Then
to allow
you can-
3,500. or-
Yeah, okay. So, okay.
And this is separate than ADUs because we've talked about the detachment factor of ADUs. So we really, this only really does apply to duplexes.
Okay.
So,
And we are not taking away design review.
So do we,
So you can require that your duplex look nice,
Yes.
I'm
not,
looking to Alan. I don't know exactly what the
It's into
standard
this, but
that's where the DRB comes in, I guess.
yeah, and I think that falls under dimensional standards because that involves, it could
The
be,
envelope.
right, it could be in the envelope, the setbacks, the lot coverage, lot ratio.
if
Exactly.
you're living in a city where a guy wanted to move his picture window so it would be over his couch, but it's in design review behind the State House. He was a strict member of the planning commission, and if he ever knew, he said, if he ever knew what it would be like to have to move his picture window 1 foot to the left, he would have done what his neighbors do and not Why?
Oh, yeah.
firm it. But I mean, it took months.
Yeah,
That's the kind of thing that gets.
right. So we've left a lot of places where you can talk about the overall dimension, but not the, I don't know about his picture window.
Design review is another,
Right.
it's probably used as often as parking as a way to limit,
Or historic preservation.
Or
yeah,
character neighborhood.
yes.
DRB is the application of character of the neighborhood.
I used to have a scenic backdrop in my backyard, but now they've decided it's not, so they raised my taxes.
But it's the same backdrop.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. So just over here, so did you have a?
I just want to double check that I understand this. So the two duplexes together would be allowed, or would be allowed to be at least the size of the single family home.
The dimension
In
that
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 area.
town
It's
has.
not at
area.
least, it's limited by, I believe.
Well, couldn't the municipality make it more? I thought
Yeah,
we
They could make it more.
That, they could give a conditional use.
But this is saying by right, you can do it within the same dimension. And then if you
And
want
the
to make
same
larger
height, so if there's a
duplexes. allow-
two-story height limit,
Right.
Yes.
then
It
it's
is permitted.
two-story.
The town can do,
Okay, but it is the case that like if it was 7,000 square feet for a single family, it's 3,500 each for the
Something like that.
duplexes,
it's,
The
or
total,
the total of the two
the
together.
total of the
would
two
be-
together.
Yeah.
You could ask
Would
for a
have
larger
the same-
dimension.
Yeah,
Okay,
But an area, a community that said, we're doing new build and we want to allow duplexing and make them a little larger than the footprint of the rest of the area could.
Is this only new build?
No, duplexing by right is anything.
I can change anything downtown into a duplex.
Mhm. Or anywhere.
Anywhere in the town.
Town.
Yeah, that's where,
I gotta check out that sprinkler. Maybe my basement's gonna become, it's got a separate entrance.
So back to, yeah, Senator Park Center.
so single unit dwelling is not defined anywhere. It's just the standard term that we
Yeah, the
use.
So. Great catch. In Title 24, in Chapter 117, single family has been used. It is not defined. Single unit does also appear, but it's usually single family. If you want to add a definition,
Then how
I
do you
think,
define family?
Well, we
well,
don't
that
use
is
it.
why
Yeah,
I went with single unit.
No, that was
Yes.
brilliant.
Because I think it is, I think it's very clear. There isn't a definition though.
Sesame Street does hold programs on families.
So the question is, is
Single
that
unit.
worth defining, or is it seem apparent enough to not bother?
I hope it is apparent. However, you have gotten, I think you have gotten testimony from people suggesting that you define all
Levels,
levels.
single, two dwelling or multi.
Yes, so you could,
But the question
It's
is,
a single household unit.
so
it-
singular units.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I think people may be afraid I'm putting in a unit and I'm gonna pack it with college students or.
right. But what we did have a big discussion where we decided we wanted to keep duplexes and ADUs as terms rather than say 2-unit dwelling, which could be either one in different circumstances. So I think we did somewhat land on a sense of understanding of what we're talking about here, and we can look at that.
In
more
this
soon.
context, I think you're talking about the footprint on the lot.
Yeah,
And if you allow 7,500 or anything,
mhm,
then you have to allow 2 of that anything on there in the same footprint.
right. And we have defined duplex as something different than,
Yeah,
we've defined things in relation to the other thing we're talking about, if that makes sense. So,
I don't want to get into people saying, well,
Okay,
we
so
don't
then
think they're a
We're
family.
into, if it's water and sewer,
Yes, and so this language hasn't changed, starting on line 21 of page 2. The next sentence is, in any district that is served by municipal water and sewer service that allows residential development, multi-unit dwellings with 4 or fewer units shall be an allowed use. So I did just want to flag here that I didn't add the word year-round or the other phrase about dimensional standards. And so I was wondering if you wanted to add that here as well.
I guess I'm wondering if there's a year-round, if there's a area of camps that have water and sewer. But we could just say year-round. I mean, like, just to be consistent, sure.
you could, but I think served by municipal water and sewer.
Is pretty, yeah, like, we're not talking about camps. So that
I wouldn't worry
is my
about it.
knowledge. Yeah.
No, it's,
And also, there may be fees, I mean,
Right.
I think you get into sort of thornier waters there.
and
Yeah.
no one has complained about this.
Not to, they've been
I mean,
complaining about
it
the
says
overall
if you allow
density.
single family, you have to allow duplexes, but now we're saying if you're on water and sewer
Mhm.
and you have single family, we have to allow apartment buildings.
Well, for quadruplexes, which,
That's been from the
An
beginning.
apartment building.
yeah, I mean, what people have raised concerns about is the overall 5 per acre density in municipal water and sewer. We did a lot of work to that section. No one has, I mean,
So if
I don't know what their argument would be here.
I don't know either, but I can pretty much bet that a lot of them don't know what we're doing, since there's no press coverage.
A lot of people are watching.
I was gonna say, I think there are
You-
lots of people watching at the moment.
But
Karen Horn is definitely
we
watching.
just said that if you allow single family, you have to allow
Within the
duplexes.
same dimension.
Now we're saying that if you have water and sewer,
Mm-hmm.
you have to allow fourplexes.
Triplexes or fourplexes.
Okay, and then we're going to say you have to allow 5 units per acre, which to me, there is a difference between 5 single-family units or even 5
Duplexes.
duplexes. But when you get up to 5 fourplexes, I'm thinking Columbia Point Housing in Boston, which they've had to tear down. It's a housing project. It's where,
Ellen has something.
Yes.
It might be helpful.
So I will say that there is new language on the next page, that was proposed on defining sewer service, water and sewer service, and,
oh, well, that's, yeah, you don't want to do it out to the industrial park.
right, and so there is actually like a
That
catch-all
was Catherine's.
out at the end of it about other issues that come up. Where the municipality identifies specific constraints that wouldn't allow
Right.
for this density.
Yeah,
So,
But then they just can't be, there's a
That's-
bigger catch-all,
no,
which is you
that's
can't engage
that
in
is
unfair housing.
Physical constraints. My concern, and again, listening to the background,
Yeah.
apart from the overall, color of law,
Mhm.
is that if you cluster a whole lot of people in a very small area,
Mhm.
and the chances are those are gonna be poor people, because people who can afford anything different are not getting clustered that. You risk creating some very difficult social issues.
I think, I mean, we have images of what we're talking about. We're talking about like 4 townhouses, like we're
Yeah,
kind
but
of like,
4 townhouses
Yeah.
on a fifth of an acre.
it's not 4 town, so overall density would be 5 per acre. So if you had 4 townhouses, then you could have 1 other single family home.
You're losing me.
Okay, this might be where the
You
white.
said
board-
You're going to allow
Yeah.
4 single-family homes on 1 acre.
4
Or
town,
5.
4, so 5 total on 1 acre.
5 one-family units, 5
They could be-
single units.
It could be 2 and
Okay,
3.
let me
Yeah,
think
yeah.
this through. So I could put 5 single-family houses.
Mhm.
If I choose to do a duplex, then I only get to do 4,
No, 3.
3 additional. Okay, that to me is what's not clear,
Okay,
that there can be a maximum
or 5.
of 5, but you can't put 4 four-family units
Mhm.
on 1 acre.
Right, this is the heart of saying, you can't say a single family home is the only acceptable form of
Okay.
housing somewhere.
That's
You
fine.
could say, I wanna take up less of my lot size with 4 townhomes, and I wanna live
And I
at
want
the
to,
end of the.
or I want to keep, we won't get into private roads
Right,
or shared wells. Only banks outside of Vermont don't understand that. Okay, or this is a way in a PUD, you say, okay, we're gonna cluster the housing down here.
but now you.
And now
have 5
I'm
units of housing.
maintaining the steep hill I couldn't
Right,
build on
or the
anyway.
conservation area outside of your.
Okay. Okay, as long as we're not,
It's not like the duplex plus the ADU
I
inside, like, we're not
just,
trying to
I
see.
just
Yeah,
believe in learning from the mistakes of the past.
that's fair. That's fair.
And too much density, there's a point at which density is not necessarily a good thing.
Right, and we don't want people to go curse every like sprawl project and curse our committee, for it. I think
Yes,
this is just about saying, you can't say a single family home is the only acceptable type of housing here on municipal water and sewer.
It's like, yeah,
If we're providing flexibility, we're
Right.
providing flexibility for.
And it's better for the environment, and a lot of people don't want or need their, you know, it's a lot of house for some people.
And many people actually want small houses. Many people
yeah,
who
I'm
could
I'm
afford.
just saying, I
bigger
just
houses.
don't
I would
wanna
love to
see
have
us,
smaller house right now.
there's a difference between, you know,
Packing.
packing, yeah, where every time you have a fight, all the neighbors know. Or every time your
Depends on how loud
kid
you
cries, all the neighbors are kept up.
Right.
That's,
And it's a trade-off that someone
Yes.
could buy that type of housing or not, if they have family stuff going on, you know, so. But it just says you can't limit something because you believe a neighborhood should only have
Okay.
single family homes. That has municipal water and sewer, would put huge resource in their ground. And then, as Ellen said, that does then, that whole package of 5 dwellings per acre has some caveats now that give communities flexibility and allows them to say, you can move those 5 units somewhere else, or you can make them more dense if you want to give them lots of open space
Okay.
behind.
that sentence to me, just taken in and of itself,
Mm-hmm.
in any district that is served by municipal sewer and water service that allows residential development, multi-unit dwellings with 4 or fewer units shall be an allowed use. So that says anywhere. I can put up,
With municipal water and sewer.
yeah, I can put up an apartment building.
But you can, the community can say, we're still, that gets us to 5 units per acre. You just,
Yeah, they still have the ability on the next page where it talks
Yeah,
about
it's, we aren't, haven't hit
the
that.
densities, the towns are still allowed to set that density standards, but they can go above 5 units per acre, but they have to allow 5 units per acre.
Somewhere.
They can set density standards if they don't want more than 5 units per acre.
But they have to allow 5 units. Somewhere in the town, there has to be a 5 unit per acre.
With water and sewer, right?
Yes, it's
Mhm.
just for the water and
With
sewer.
water.
Yeah.
So,
And anywhere with water and sewer.
so
Just to be
that's
clear,
where we want to limit. I mean, that's where I think, given the Catherine notion of the water and sewer going out
Yes.
to the industrial.
Oh, yeah,
park,
she
I
helped.
think
Well,
we
that's
want
what's
to
on
limit this to
4 and 5.
the smart growth areas.
exactly,
That's coming
that's
up.
on page 4 and 5.
Okay, so this is all contingent. This is all allowed only in smart growth areas.
Well,
So
project
there's
like
no
this
such
is-
thing as a smart growth area as a designation.
Right, the designate.
So the new language on page 4 and 5 gives the town I think fairly significant discretion in how they define those areas. We're not using the word smart growth, but there is it's giving them a lot more discretion on actually setting these areas.
right.
So instead of saying it a quarter of a mile around a designated area, conceivably, that was served by water and sewer, if it's outside of the desert, is this where we come in?
No, that's Act 250, which this is all municipal.
Okay.
These are where our columns are just 2, everywhere or where there's municipal
Okay.
water and sewer. And we shouldn't intermix those words, you know, because we're giving them
Need to get
discretion
this
within
in.
their local zoning to say, you can decide how you want to distribute this. You can
Now.
have denser in some areas, less dense in other areas, exclude critical flood, wetland habitat areas, but this is still just saying, this is a kind of different principle that you just can't zone out 3 or 4 unit dwellings because you don't
Exactly.
like them, you don't think they fit the character when you have municipal water and sewer that have capacity for you to change up how you get your density.
Yeah, and so currently under the statute, towns are only required to allow multi-unit dwellings in one residential district. This is now broadening that to requiring them to allow these multi-unit dwellings in any residential district, if there's sewer and water, and then allowing them to define what that means for them.
Right.
And where is the check on it not being the sewer and water after the industrial park?
It's on the next, it's in the
Okay,
highlight.
it's in the next
Yes.
It's in there.
Okay, so that non-conforming lot down the street from me, which two neighbors bought and divided up, they could now put that back together and put a 4-unit development up there?
Don't know about this particular lot, but.
Sorry, there were a lot of details in
Right.
there.
No, I mean,
So-
there's a non-conforming lot, but it was conforming when it was developed,
Right, what makes it non-conforming?
size.
Okay.
So they just cut it in half and now it's littler parcels?
Well, both, yeah, they put a fence down the middle, both neighbors now have larger yards. But if that were together, they could now put a 4-plex on there and it could be 4 stories high in a single-family neighborhood.
So.
I'm I've got to go answer to my most conservative town.
Sure, is there
Um,
sewer and water?
Oh, there's sewer and water.
There is nothing in here that allows height.
Yeah, right, they couldn't,
Yeah, so height is not in there, but if it is in a residential district, with sewer and water, the town is still allowed to have
It would
their
still have to meet the
dimension-
coverage.
Yes,
Mhm.
so, yeah.
and if they're already out of conformance, like, they don't just, just.
Okay, and it couldn't be 4 stories high if the zoning says
Right.
2 stories,
Mhm.
which it probably now says single families. No, because there's multifamilies down the street. I got the homeless shelter.
There you go.
And we are putting up, or trying a whole lot of Habitat for Humanity up on the
Right,
top of the hill if they can get water up there.
that's a big,
It's a big if, it's straight up.
that
Okay.
makes Zach happy.
This was it's another big section, we don't want it to go
I think on the
unnoted.
butter, I haven't complained.
So I think that was good, we got a lot of questions answered. Are we ready to go to the ADU piece? Which is just part of the ADU piece, we're still in section 2.
Yeah. Yeah,
We're gonna have to talk about time.
so on page 3, there isn't new language here, but on line 12, I highlighted, I
It's different
bolded the word and, because I had a question, so. And I can read through the whole thing if you want, but last week you did discuss moving the sort of definitional phrase to the top of the paragraph. And from a grammar point of view, I'd have to rewrite. It's not an easy move, is what I just want to flag.
Okay, I think that was stylistic because I
Yeah.
thought we heard the editors
Right.
preferred it, and
And
I
so-
really acknowledged it, yeah.
Right, okay, so what I did do is that I did put in the definition section a reference to this section.
Okay, that's fine.
So,
For my purposes, I don't know about others. Senator Clarkson, you had raised the question about, does the definition exist, and it's referenced where.
It does, it's existed since 1992.
yes.
So it exists.
So, and we are still going against its definition by striking out on an owner occupied lot. So I still have an issue with that, and I'm happy to address it as we go through this, but I'm still unhappy
Page 3.
with that. Because I think it's
Go back.
different.
That was the test.
We're on page 3, line 6.
This is definitely a discussion point. We added language about there's a lien if you took public money
To
for
develop it.
15 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we have,
but we've left
But
alone.
that
the-
doesn't, that, you put that in the condition of,
accepting,
yeah,
The
that's
50,000,
a separate,
up to
that's not in
50,000.
your zoning statutes.
Right,
That's a condition of your loan.
Yes.
I,
So all I'm saying is right now in the bill, there's not an owner occupation requirement for ADUs that have not received public money. The owner occupation provision exists.
I thought it was in the,
owner occupied has been in the definition since 1992. There has, as we've heard, been no major issues about this.
I think what we've heard is there's a lot of testimony, people just aren't enforcing it because they And I don't, I
No.
personally don't like to have things on the books that we're just not enforcing.
You may
because
not
that hasn't
like
been
to.
An issue.
But this has been the defined use of an ADU for a long time. And it, you know, it may not be enforced. Lots of our things are not enforced. Our seatbelt laws aren't enforced.
Yes,
But
they
it,
are.
they aren't. No, we still don't have a primary seatbelt
Let's
law.
stick with housing.
So I'm just flagging it.
Yes,
as-
that you
as-
disagree, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think that when you have a subordinate property, and these are available to be developed on
Right.
anywhere.
I think what we heard, and I don't want to speak for the majority of the committee, is that if you were to reintroduce a proposal on owner occupation, it would have to end at some point.
Why? It has, you, every time you buy a building with an ADU in it, you can choose to either keep the ADU or not. It's your house. You
I
can,
think the difference gets to be, I am now able to rent out one smaller
Subordinate
unit in my apartment. Once I'm not living there, it now has become a 2-unit apartment building. And
fine, then I hear that, and I hear your concern. Then I would like us to, maybe Ellen and I can work on language that says after it's developed, you know, that we could come up with either a time limit or upon sale.
I think you ought to just remain silent on the issue. But I think we also need to realize that we are in all likelihood contributing to the development of B&Bs, of
One unit.
Airbnbs.
One unit.
Yeah. That I think is contrary to what we're trying to do. This pushing for accessory dwelling units helps if you want to keep grandma in or your college age students that can't afford it. But it also allows people to create Airbnbs on their 3rd floor or in their basement.
And some people, I mean, that helps keep grandma in her home
Right.
if she could rent out part of it.
Yes,
You know.
and if you allow 2 of those units to be not owner occupied, you are increasing, why couldn't you have 2 accessory dwelling units? I mean, it just increases,
You could.
you're just increasing the ability of people to have short-term rentals.
Well,
Which
that's
is-
been since 1992. So.
But you had to be owner occupied.
Ex-
If it doesn't have to be owner occupied, Burlington is requiring you have to be owner occupied.
For a short-term rental.
Or, yes.
Well, I think we also, so
And we do
Brattleboro
too. It's
has
not
that on the books, but they're not enforcing it. I don't believe Burlington is enforcing.
Well,
it.
it'd be pretty hard to,
So I think the larger philosophical question becomes, if we allow duplexing by right and we, you know, try to make more housing available, do we want something on the books that most communities aren't enforcing because they feel like the signal is, let's create more housing? So.
Yeah, I just think it's important to distinguish between the creation of the ADU and the rental of the ADU. And I think
Yes.
Burlington's ordinance is in regard to the rental. You can't rent it unless you live on the property.
Right.
Brattleboro's ordinance, which may be from 92, says something about creating an ADU, that needs to be on an owner occupied property. So that
Big
was
population.
true.
So at
when-
inception.
Right.
Yeah.
When it was created, the owner lived there.
right.
It doesn't say the owner has to live there
Mhm.
Permanent.
permanently.
Right.
Yeah,
And I
Just-
think.
So I think those two things can exist at the
Mhm.
same time.
I see what you're saying.
Well,
Could
the
we,
law,
yeah.
At least I'm just reading the law on ADUs, and it says that no bylaw shall have the effect of excluding as a permitted use one accessory dwelling unit that is located within or pertinent to a single-family dwelling on an owner-occupied lot. And if I'm reading that correctly, that would be at the beginning, but also there could be a bylaw that excludes it as a permitted use on an ongoing basis forever.
Right.
I think it's by right, isn't an ADUs, aren't ADUs that was one of the big deals of the ability to develop them, is it was a by right. It's the only other by right housing that we have.
Well, can be excluded as a permitted use. The ADU could be excluded as a permitted use
I didn't know
if it's
that.
not on an owner occupied lot, if I'm
Yes.
reading this
Yeah.
correctly.
If it's
Yes,
not,
right.
right,
If it's not.
but if it
So if
is
it
owner
is,
occupied,
then-
it is a by right.
Then it is, you can't exclude the use of it, the use of an ADU.
If it's owner occupied.
At the time of creation.
So that may be
That's-
where we
No,
want to draw.
This
it's
is
an
a
issue
different
of a
thing.
bylaw. So
Right.
like
Yeah.
the town could pass a bylaw at any time,
Right.
according to this,
Right, yes.
excluding it as a permitted unit.
If it's not owner occupied.
No, it's on an owner occupied lot.
But it
says,
can,
Okay.
No
Yes.
bylaw shall have the effect of excluding a permitted use if it's on an occupied lot. So you could permit it, but then if it's not owner occupied at that point,
Yes,
it's the opposite of that
yes,
that exists. And it says you could exclude.
yes.
right. So if it's a renter occupied main house, you can exclude an ADU.
Well,
It doesn't have to be the same owner. The point is that,
The owner
The
could
owner of
change
the
and the
property.
situation could change with respect to what could be excluded.
right, but it's the category of the owner, it's not the specific person of the owner.
It's the
Or
type of
the, or
owner.
the person living there, it needs to be the owner
Yeah.
versus a renter in the main house,
And
is how I.
No, we shifted it. We made it possible for the main owner to be in the ADU.
yes, but I think what you're finding is that it's like code enforcement. Towns don't want to be put in the position of being the villain where they're not gonna go, I mean, going into a man's home is his castle and telling him what he can or cannot do is the kind of thing that can get you shot. If there's no issue, the town, if both units get rented out to college students or, and there's loud parties, then the town is going to take action. There's been an accessory dwelling unit in a house up the street from me for years. I'm sure it was against all the bylaws. But it was a single person that lived in didn't cause any trouble. No one complains, no issues. This hasn't been an issue. We are making so many changes. I think we should just be quiet. We got into trouble when we wanted to put public money into it.
Mhm,
That puts a condition on your deed,
mhm.
which is very different than a
Mhm.
zoning ordinance. It's
Right.
there permanently. If we want to set up, when you sell it, you have to pay off.
If you're not good, if it's
If
long,
you- yeah,
continuous
you know.
long-term rental.
That's fine. That's done all
Okay,
the
I think we should maybe set a time limit on that, so they just don't have an undefined lien on their property.
Well, we haven't gotten to that yet.
Right, so I mean,
That's one.
there's two paths, right? One is we could be silent on owner occupation in a way that allows towns to depart to that standard, but not say it has to be owner occupied in state statute, right? That's the question.
This is new territory.
Is this a permissive section, or is the state saying an ADU has to be owner occupied?
The state
Conflict.
is saying a town has to allow an ADU
And
that's
that was
owner
revolutionary
occupied.
when it,
Mhm.
If the town doesn't want to require owner occupancy, they are allowed to do that.
Okay,
I
okay, so
think
it's,
that's
okay,
fine.
that's,
Yeah.
I can live with that. So we'll change the language to match that. Unless we
think
haven't
that's what
touched,
it
I don't
says.
remember what we.
So on line 6,
you struck,
yes.
which I would,
On an owner occupied lot. So that was original to the bill, that was an
it's
issue.
original to the statute of
The
ADU.
striking of
The
owner
striking of
occupied lot
owner
was
occupied,
original
yeah.
to the bill.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean it's the original.
No, I'm just
statute.
saying, so we are making a change that we haven't yet made in the bill.
To unstrike
to
it.
unstrike.
Right.
Yes.
I would propose unstriking that.
So, and we're permitting them to, that's permitting them to
Yes.
then take the owner occupation requirement out as a community if they would like.
Yes, what we're saying is that by right, if I want to make an accessory dwelling unit in my house and we've got waters, all those other things, I have a right to do that.
Yes.
Town can't say I can't.
If it's owner occupied.
Yes, me.
Right. That
But
is what I.
if I want to rent my house and rent the owner and develop and move to Florida,
Then your town
can say no.
can say no.
But they don't have to say no.
Right. Okay.
Wow.
Wait, these are the
Free-
media
Wow, we're on
section.
page 3.
No,
But
but
in the
this is
next,
important.
after the next 3 minutes, we're gonna have to start
Oh,
talking about the
And it's
time
new.
of this bill.
Maybe we're meeting till.
Maybe we're meeting in the morning before 9 a.m. Is the question. And Senator Brock has been pretty quiet, so it's not his fault, and I know it affects him the most if we do go earlier, but we'll have to really talk about that. Let's try to get through this last wording on this. Did we get through this?
So we're unstriking line 6.
Yes, and then we're on line 9.
Right, so
So
there's
to get
this
through this.
language, the criteria for conversion of an existing detached, non-residential building to a habitable space for an accessory dwelling unit shall not be more restrictive than the criteria used for single-family dwelling without
That's fine.
accessory
I
dwelling.
think we're okay with that. So we just have a couple minutes left. We have 2 areas to my own knowledge that we flagged. We're all gonna, decide how we feel about the parking, the big parking, which the minimums. And Senator Harrison's gonna come back with some language for the larger question of how we deal with transit. in that.
Right, which might be in another section. That's what.
Okay, but we flagged the second piece. We made it to, we finished page 3, we're on page 4. That's a pretty meaty
This
section.
is 4.
There's, so here's what I'm gonna say. We have and I don't know Ellen's availability before 9 a.m. on Thursday and Friday.
Yes, I'm available.
Okay, I'm sure.
Well,
Scott is-
I guess actually, I think,
Meeting on Friday morning at 8 to 9.
8 to 9, okay,
Friday morning,
okay.
every Friday morning.
Well, then I was gonna say we could do 8:30 to 9 both days, but then Thursday we might have to do 8 to 9 with Ellen, if that, so we don't bother your Friday thing. So I'm gonna assume that we're not gonna finish this in 45 minutes tomorrow, and that people should count on meeting at 8 a.m. on Thursday with Ellen from 8 to 9.
Yeah,
I'm going to my planning commission Wednesday.
Okay.
and we have a hearing together Thursday evening,
Then we have a hearing on Thursday evening, so it's a long day.
Oh, that's right.
and I can't join until 8:30. So anyway, it's
Okay,
a standing meeting. I need to
Okay.
do.
so we have Ellen for another hour and 45 minutes. And we have a lot to
We
get
could
through.
skip caucus.
You mean right now? No,
Senator Cuppings.
she's presenting. I'm
Yeah,
presiding.
I don't even know what I'm saying at this point, but I'll take this bill with me.
You're gonna be brilliant.
So I just still want to flag that we are trying to avoid a lot of spillover into next week because Natural Resources is getting this bill, and we want to give them the courtesy of at least 3-ish days to look at this before it's headed toward appropriations. So
We could also
We
do
have
a
a-
working lunch conceivably either tomorrow or.
I don't know if it's an either or is what I'm saying. I hope an hour and 45 minutes is enough with Ellen. But maybe by tomorrow, seeing what we get through those 45 minutes, we might also need a working lunch Thursday or Friday. That will have to move things around.
Even a
Okay,
working
so what
dinner
time are we
Wednesday.
coming in tomorrow morning?
Tomorrow is still
9.
9 a.m.
Okay,
Do we want
so
to
if
do
we're
it
all
early?
quiet and we get through this, we might not have to come in the morning, right?
we haven't even talked about Act 250.
I
yet.
know, exactly. Yeah. So, do people feel like they want to come in at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning too, so we don't take a lunch?
Or 8:30?
Which one?
That's, either one's fine.
Ellen, you're reading.
But not 8:30. Okay.
I'm not free at 8:30.
She's reasonable, but not free.
So that probably makes Wednesday a little too complicated because we get her for half an hour and then have a half an hour where we could, because we have the election.
Oh,
Wait, why does it
Oh,
say?
that's right, we have,
Thursday,
This is,
the
we
election.
have a
Elections on
election.
Thursday.
okay,
10:30, and we have a contested election, although sadly, no senators are running.
okay, well, while we stay live, I just want to say we'll leave Wednesday alone in the morning for now. We have Ellen for 45 minutes that day. We'll see how far we get. And then we will be meeting at 8 a.m. on Thursday, no matter what, with Ellen for an hour. And people should just look at their lunch plans Thursday and Friday, because that time might get taken up
Friday, I can't do, but I could do Wednesday or Thursday.
If you don't mind if I don't do agenda planning,
for finance or.
I
don't
I do it. It usually just takes a few. I've got the mini TIFs bill as of
Right, that's
today.
right.
That's gonna take some time.
Yes, it will.
We've got it on
We
Friday
appreciate
just
that.
for a walkthrough.
Oh, we appreciate that.
It's gonna take a lot more work.
Yes. So we will see you tomorrow, Ellen, at 10:45. And people will prepare for 8 a.m. start on Thursday. And maybe look at sections and ask questions so that we can try to avoid another hour that we need to find somewhere. If people can look through, especially this really big section on page 4 and 5.
Great, so I will say this, the bill hasn't been edited yet still.
Okay.
I did find more typos last night, so
Okay.
like, I'm catching them because we're still working on it, but there are some new concepts in here, not only in my section, but in David's section and
Okay.
Damien's as well, so.
Right.
Oh,
And we do have separate time.
all right. I have a meeting with the treasurer at 12:30 on Thursday.
We have the same meeting, so
Okay.
it would, like, if this bill has to sort of take priority, even if it's a half hour that we get on Thursday, but we will, then let's try to do this in an hour and 45 minutes is what I would say. And let's do some homework outside to be, just if people can flip through